They say money can't buy happiness, but that scorching summer she paid $100 for a stranger, and it transformed everything she thought she knew about life. At the town's grimy labor market, she lifted her hand on a foolish wager, thinking she'd win herself a week of manual labor and perhaps an amusing tale to share at dinner parties. Instead, she found herself the owner of a tormented soul with demons he couldn't escape, a mule with an attitude problem, and a secret dangerous enough to destroy them all. And by the time that weathered bounty notice appeared nailed to the town post, she had already offered him something far more perilous than her money. She had given him her heart. Before we continue with this tale, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit that subscribe button because I've got something extraordinary waiting for you tomorrow that you won't want to miss. The summer of 1882 burned across Meadowfield, Texas, like wildfire through dry grass. The yearly harvest celebration had attracted people from neighboring counties, their carriages stirring up dust devils that lingered in the motionless air like unanswered questions. At the heart of the chaos stood the labor platform, a rough-hewn wooden stage where broken men traded their strength for coins and survival. Eleanor Blackwood adjusted her lace parasol and pretended not to notice the judgmental glances from the other respectable women. At 26, she was what charitable people called selective and what her father called stubborn as a Missouri mule. The daughter of Magistrate Harrison Blackwood, the most powerful man in 4 counties, Eleanor had rejected 9 marriage proposals in 6 years. Every potential husband had been approved by her father, merchants, land speculators, attorneys, but Eleanor could see past their rehearsed compliments to the greed lurking in their souls. "Eleanor, this is improper," murmured her younger sister, 19-year-old Violet, clutching her arm nervously. "Respectable women don't attend these auctions." "Respectable women don't do much of anything interesting," Eleanor responded, her hazel eyes locked on the platform. "Maybe that's why we're all dying of boredom." The auctioneer, a thick-necked man called Silas Crane, shouted prices for fence menders, field workers, and stable hands. Men paraded forward, flexing muscles, displaying calloused palms like prized cattle at a fair. Eleanor felt revulsion rise in her throat at the degrading spectacle, yet something compelled her to stay. Then he emerged from the crowd. The cowboy stood nearly 6 feet 7 inches tall, with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of mountains. His sun-weathered face bore the marks of hard living, of countless nights beneath endless stars and brutal days in the saddle. Wheat-colored hair fell across his brow, partially concealing eyes the shade of gathering thunderclouds. But what captured Eleanor's attention wasn't his imposing size, it was his absolute stillness. While other men strutted and posed, he simply existed, hands relaxed at his sides, as though he'd surrendered to whatever destiny awaited him. Behind him stood the most obstinate-looking mule Eleanor had ever witnessed, gray with cream markings and an expression suggesting it held strong opinions about everything and approved of absolutely nothing. "Next up," Silas roared, "we've got ourselves an authentic cowboy straight from the northern plains. Calls himself Daniel Thornton. Claims he can rope, break horses, construct, mend, and tackle any job you throw at him. Opening bid is $20 for 7 days' work, room and board provided." A few hands rose without enthusiasm. 30. 45. The bidding stagnated. "Look at the size of that one," someone hollered. "Probably devours a side of beef daily and produces half as much work." "What about that mule?" another voice chimed in. "Creature looks meaner than a cornered badger." Daniel Thornton's jaw clenched almost imperceptibly, but he remained silent. Eleanor noticed how his hand instinctively moved to rest on the mule's neck, a gesture so tender it made something twist painfully in her chest. 45 going once," Silas announced. Eleanor's companion, Josephine Whitmore, the merchant's daughter, leaned closer with mischief dancing in her eyes. "I dare you to bid on him," she whispered. "Your father would suffer a heart attack." "Don't be absurd," Eleanor replied, but her hand was already rising. $60, she called out, her voice slicing through the murmuring crowd. Every head swiveled toward her. Whispers spread through the gathering like ripples across still water. Eleanor felt heat flood her face, but she kept her spine straight and her gaze steady. 80. came a voice from the rear. Eleanor turned to see Marcus Ashford, the territory's wealthiest rancher and her father's newest candidate for son-in-law. His smile held all the warmth of a January frost. $100, Eleanor countered before rational thought could intervene. The crowd fell into shocked silence. $100 for a week's labor was unprecedented, more than most men earned in 3 months. Daniel Thornton looked directly at her for the first time, and Eleanor felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, like discovering a door in a wall she'd believed was solid. 100 going once, twice, sold to Miss Eleanor Blackwood. As the hammer fell, Daniel Thornton stepped down from the platform and approached her, the mule plodding behind. He stopped at a respectful distance and touched the brim of his battered hat. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and quiet as distant thunder, "I suspect you just purchased yourself considerably more trouble than you anticipated." But something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or maybe relief, that made Eleanor's reckless bid feel like the first intelligent decision she'd made in years. "Trouble," she replied, startling herself with her own audacity, "is precisely what I was seeking." As they stood facing each other in that dusty town square, neither could have predicted that this single moment would unleash a cascade of events that would challenge everything they believed about love, honor, and the cost of redemption. The mule, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, chose that precise instant to release a bray that sounded remarkably like mocking laughter. The Blackwood mansion sprawled on Meadowfield's outskirts like a monument to success. White pillars, sculpted gardens, and sufficient rooms to accommodate half the township. As Eleanor led Daniel through the iron gates, she could practically feel the house itself expressing disapproval at her latest act of defiance. Eleanor Margaret Blackwood, her father's voice thundered from the veranda. Magistrate Harrison Blackwood stood over 6 feet tall with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that made witnesses confess. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" "I hired assistants, Father," Eleanor responded with practiced composure. "Surely that's not grounds for alarm." "Assistants?" Magistrate Blackwood's eyes traveled up Daniel's considerable height. "You hired a giant and is that a mule?" "Her name's Clementine," Daniel said softly. "She holds strong convictions about most matters, but she's loyal company." As if to demonstrate, Clementine wandered over to the magistrate's prized rose garden and began sampling the blooms with obvious pleasure. "Stop that beast this instant," the magistrate bellowed. Daniel whistled softly, a low melodic sound, and Clementine immediately abandoned the roses, though she continued eyeing them with transparent longing. Eleanor's younger brother, Samuel, age 15, came racing down the front steps. "Is he truly 7 feet tall?" he asked, craning his neck upward. 6.5, Daniel replied with a hint of a smile. Though Clementine here enjoys telling folks, "I'm 8 feet" when she's feeling generous with facts. Samuel laughed, the first genuine laughter Eleanor had heard from him since their mother's passing 3 years earlier. Even young Grace, barely 11 years old, peeked out from behind the porch columns with fascinated eyes. "The man will sleep in the stable," Magistrate Blackwood declared. "He can begin with repairing the fence along the eastern pasture." But Eleanor had already noticed something in Daniel's eyes when he looked at her siblings, a gentleness that reminded her of their late mother. "Actually, Father, I thought he might stay in the guest cottage. It's been vacant since old Benjamin passed, and it seems more humane." The magistrate's face turned an alarming shade of crimson. "Humane? Eleanor, have you completely lost your mind?" "Quite possibly," she admitted cheerfully. "But the cottage has plumbing and a proper bed. Surely Christian compassion demands." "Christian compassion," her father interrupted, "does not require us to house every vagrant who drifts into town." Daniel had remained silent during this exchange. Finally, he spoke. "The stable will suit me fine, Miss Blackwood. I'm grateful for the work, wherever you place me." Something in his quiet dignity made Eleanor's throat tighten. Here was a man who expected nothing and requested less, and somehow that made her want to offer him everything. "Nonsense," she said firmly. "The cottage it is." By the 4th day, Daniel Thornton had become an undeniable catalyst for change at the Blackwood estate. The squeaking gate that had irritated Magistrate Blackwood for 3 years suddenly swung silent as a whisper. The unstable porch steps stood firm and secure. The broken weather vane atop the barn spun cheerfully in the breeze. But it was the smaller gestures that captured Eleanor's attention. The way Daniel sat patiently while Grace braided wildflowers into Clementine's mane, how he taught Samuel to whittle without once losing his temper, the careful way he repaired Violet's music box with hands that seemed too large for such delicate work. "He's quite talented," Violet observed as they watched Daniel rebuild the garden gate with Samuel as his enthusiastic assistant. "Father's been intending to fix that gate for 4 years." Eleanor nodded, her attention caught by the way Daniel explained each step to Samuel, letting the boy hold the nails and even hammer a few himself. There was a patience about him that spoke of deep reserves of kindness. "Eleanor," Violet continued, lowering her voice, "people are talking. People always talk. What are they saying now?" "That you're carrying on with a common laborer. Josephine Whitmore's mother told Mrs. Ashford that you've taken complete leave of your senses. If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to share it with someone who loves tales of unexpected romance and second chances, and don't forget to leave a comment telling me what you think will happen next, because your predictions might just surprise you." That evening, Eleanor found Daniel sitting on the cottage porch working on a carving. This one appeared to be a bird in flight, its wings spread wide as if caught in a moment of perfect freedom. "May I join you?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "It's your property, Miss Blackwood. You can sit anywhere you please." "Eleanor," she corrected, settling into the chair beside him. "We've been sharing the same dinner table for 4 days. I think we can dispense with formalities." She watched his skilled fingers shape the wood, each cut deliberate and sure. "You're very talented. Where did you learn to carve like that?" "My grandfather taught me. Said a man should know how to create beautiful things, that not just practical ones." Daniel held up the bird, examining his work in the lamplight. "Of course, he also said a man should know when to keep his mouth shut and his hands busy. Wisdom I probably should have heeded." There was something in his tone, a weight of regret, that made Eleanor lean forward. "What do you mean?" Daniel was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I haven't always been a man you'd want sitting on your porch, Eleanor. There are things in my past, choices I made, that I can't undo. We all have regrets," she said softly. "The question is what we do with them." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Eleanor felt something shift between them, like the air before a storm. Instead of continuing, he handed her the carved bird. "This is for you," he said, "for your kindness, for giving a stranger a chance." The bounty notice appeared on a Thursday morning, nailed to the post outside Henderson's general store like a declaration of war. By midday, half the town had seen it. By evening, the other half had heard about it, with details growing more sensational with each retelling. Eleanor learned about it from Violet, who burst into the sewing room. "Eleanor, you need to see this." Violet's face was ashen, her hands trembling as she thrust the paper forward. "Mrs. Henderson gave it to me," she said. "Everyone's talking. The poster was crude but effective. Wanted dead or alive. Daniel Thornton, $500 reward. Armed robbery. Train robbery. Member of the Dalton gang. Extremely dangerous." Below the bold text was a sketched likeness that was unmistakably the man currently teaching Grace how to braid rope behind the barn. Eleanor sank into her chair, the poster shaking in her hands. $500. In a town where most folks earn $20 a month, that kind of money could transform lives. "What are you going to do?" Violet whispered. Before Eleanor could answer, heavy footsteps announced their father's arrival. Magistrate Blackwood filled the doorway, his face grim as a funeral. "I assume you've seen it," he said without preamble. Eleanor lifted her chin. "If you mean the poster, yes. $500, Eleanor. For harboring a known outlaw under our roof. Do you understand what this means for our family, for our reputation?" "I understand what it means for Daniel," Eleanor replied quietly. "The question is, what do we do about it?" Magistrate Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. "What do we do? We turn him in, naturally. I've already sent word to the sheriff in the neighboring county. He'll be here by morning." "No." The word came out sharper than Eleanor intended. She stood, the bounty notice crumpling in her fist. "We do nothing until we hear his side of the story." "His side?" Magistrate Blackwood's voice rose. Eleanor, the man is a wanted criminal. He's been living at our home, eating at our table, around your brother and sister. What if he decided to rob us, or worse? Then he would have done it already. Eleanor shot back. Father, he's had countless opportunities. Instead, he's repaired everything broken in this house and treated us with nothing but kindness and respect. Respect? Magistrate Blackwood laughed bitterly. He lied to us from the moment he arrived. That's not respect, Eleanor. That's deception. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes, but her voice remained steady. Maybe he had good reasons for not telling us. Maybe he's not the man the poster says he is. The poster says he's a member of the Dalton gang. It says he's robbed trains. Those aren't the kind of accusations made lightly. And what if he is? Eleanor's words hung in the air like a challenge. What if he did those things and regrets them? What if he's trying to become a better man? Her father stared at her as if she'd sprouted horns. Eleanor, you cannot be serious. You cannot possibly be defending a criminal. I'm defending a man who has shown us nothing but decency. A man who makes Grace laugh and teaches Samuel responsibility and fixes things without being asked. I'm defending someone who... She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Someone who what, Eleanor? She took a shaky breath. Someone I care about. The silence that followed was deafening. Magistrate Blackwood's face went through several shades of red before settling on purple. You care about him, he repeated slowly. You've known him for less than a week, and you care about a wanted outlaw. Yes, Eleanor said simply. Yes, I do. Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. Magistrate Blackwood turned toward the door, then paused. He'll be gone by morning, Eleanor. With or without the sheriff's help. I won't have my family's name dragged through the mud for the sake of your romantic notions. Eleanor found Daniel sitting on the cottage steps, Clementine grazing peacefully nearby. He looked up as she approached, and she saw immediately that he knew, the resignation in his eyes, the slump of his shoulders. He'd been waiting for this moment since the day he arrived. You've seen it, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Eleanor pulled the bounty notice from her pocket and held it out. Is it true? Daniel took the paper, staring at his own sketched face for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. Most of it. The simple honesty of his answer hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Tell me, she said, sinking down beside him on the steps. Tell me all of it. Daniel was quiet for so long that Eleanor thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of years. I came back from the war with nothing. No family, no home, no purpose. I was angry at the world, at God, at myself. When I fell in with the Dalton boys, it felt like I finally had brothers again. Men who understood what it was like to have everything you believed in stripped away. We robbed trains, banks, stagecoaches. I told myself we were taking from the rich railroad barons who'd gotten fat while good men died in the war. Made it easier to sleep at night. Did you kill anyone? Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. No. The word came out sharp and certain. I carried a gun, but I never used it on a person. Never even drew it except to intimidate. But men died during those robberies. Guards, passengers who tried to fight back. Maybe I didn't pull the trigger, but I was there when it happened. Eleanor felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Why did you stop? Daniel looked at her then, and she saw pain so deep it took her breath away. Because one day we robbed a train carrying a family heading west to start a new life. The father tried to protect his wife and children, and one of the boys, not me, but one of my brothers, shot him down in cold blood. I watched that man die trying to shield his family, and I realized I'd become the kind of monster I used to fight against. So you left? That night. Took Clementine and rode away without a word. Been trying to live an honest life ever since, working when I could, helping where I was needed. 6 years now, moving from town to town, always looking over my shoulder. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have bid on me if you'd known? Daniel's smile was bitter. Would you have invited a wanted outlaw into your home, around your brother and sister? The sheriff will be here in the morning, she said quietly. Daniel nodded. I figured as much. I'll be gone before then. Where will you go? Does it matter? There's always another town, another name, another chance to start over. He stood, towering over her in the lamplight. Eleanor, I want you to know, these past few days have been the closest thing to peace I've known since the war. You and your family, you made me remember what it felt like to be part of something good. Eleanor rose to face him. Daniel, wait. What if there was another way? What do you mean? Eleanor's mind raced. An idea was forming, desperate and dangerous, but maybe, just maybe, possible. What if you didn't run? What if you stayed and faced this? Daniel stared at her, as if she'd suggested he sprout wings and fly. Eleanor, I'm a wanted man. There's no facing this. There's only rope or bullets. Not necessarily. Eleanor's voice grew stronger as the plan solidified in her mind. My father is a magistrate. He has connections, influence. What if we could arrange for you to surrender voluntarily? Turn yourself in. Tell your story. Let the court decide. Your father wants me gone. He's not going to help me. Maybe not, Eleanor admitted, but he might help me. And there's something else, Daniel. Something you need to understand. I care about you, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I know it's been less than a week. I know it's insane, but I care about who you are now, not who you used to be. And if you run, if you disappear into the night, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. For a moment, hope flickered in Daniel's eyes. Then reality crashed back down. Eleanor, even if by some miracle I avoided hanging, I'd still be a convict, an ex-outlaw. Your father would never accept that, and neither would this town. You'd be throwing away your reputation, your future, for a man who can't give you anything but heartbreak. Eleanor stepped closer, close enough to smell the scent of wood shavings and honest sweat that seemed to follow him everywhere. Let me worry about my reputation. Let me decide what my future looks like. The question is, are you brave enough to fight for something worth having? Daniel's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. You don't know what you're asking. I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to believe that love is stronger than fear, that redemption is possible, that a man can change his destiny if he's willing to pay the price. Her voice broke slightly. I'm asking you to stay and find out what happens when two people decide to fight for each other instead of running away. For a long moment they stood frozen in the lamplight, the weight of decision hanging between them like a bridge that, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. Finally Daniel nodded. All right, he said quietly. I'll stay. God help us both, I'll stay. As they stood together in the growing darkness, neither of them saw the figure watching from the shadows. Marcus Ashford, his face twisted with rage and calculation. He'd come to confront Eleanor about her foolish infatuation with the hired man, only to discover something far more useful, a wanted outlaw in love with the magistrate's daughter. By dawn, half the territory would know that Daniel Thornton was holed up at the Blackwood estate, and Ashford would make certain they also knew that Magistrate Blackwood's daughter was harboring a criminal, compromising not just her own reputation, but her father's position as well. The storm that had been brewing all week was about to become a hurricane, and before it was over, everyone involved would discover exactly what they were willing to sacrifice for love, honor, and the chance at redemption. If this story has captured your heart, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear a tale about courage, second chances, and the kind of love that refuses to give up. Drop a comment below telling me what you think should happen next, and make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's story is going to take your breath away. Until then, remember that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love is always worth fighting for, no matter the cost.